At the end of April, Stellar Blade will finally be released, and as someone who's been following this game ever since it was called Project Eve, it's been awesome to see how far it's come, because originally, to me at least, it kinda gave me the vibe of one of those games that would never release. You know how sometimes they just show trailers for those games that look so awesome, they take inspiration from all of your favorite things, it looks absolutely gorgeous and it kinda looks too cool to be true, and then they reveal the title only for it to be called Project something. It's made by a studio that doesn't have a lot of experience, if any, in AAA development, and there's no hint of a release date, only for those games to never show up again because they got too big in their vision or they just ended up getting cancelled. That's kinda the vibe that I got from Stellar Blade for a while, but no, it's almost here now, and we even got to play it since they released a demo for it, and let me tell you, the demo did not disappoint. There are some small gripes I have with it, of course, but it honestly just felt great to play, and I can't wait for the full release. And because of that, I just wanted to talk about it for a little bit. Online, the conversation is also kind of focused on the wrong parts of the game, in my opinion, so I thought I'd join the part of the conversation that's actually talking about the game itself. If you're interested in more videos like this, be it pre-release discussions or reviews, be sure to check out my channel. All of the support is greatly appreciated. But let's start off by talking about this game, by talking about what will be most important for most people, the gameplay and the combat, which was actually a bit slower than I expected it to be. Online you hear a lot of people say that this game plays a lot like NieR and Sekiro, some people even going as far as to calling it the Korean NieR clone for a while, but while that inspiration is definitely there, it honestly feels a lot more like a Souls title compared to a NieR game, where NieR is very fast-paced hack-and-slash action combat. Here it feels a lot more deliberate, it feels heavier, and at times I would just stand back, wait for an enemy to attack so I could then parry or perfect dodge, something that didn't really happen during my time playing NieR. So combat-wise, I would honestly say that this game is more of a Souls-like, and the NieR inspiration, at least so far, seems to be more in the presentation of everything. This could change later in the game, of course, as you unlock more skills, which might make the game faster paced, or when I get better at the game because I'll have played it more, or when you unlock the ranged attacks, because those do look very much like the pods or Grimoire-wise in NieR, but for now, I would say that the NieR inspiration is mostly just the visuals and the vibe of everything, which is definitely not a bad thing, because I honestly had a lot of fun with this combat system. Yes, it is a bit slower than you would expect, but that doesn't even mean that it's slow-paced, and it definitely doesn't make it any worse, because the combat was, in my opinion, really satisfying, even if it was pretty challenging, and at first I was honestly pretty shit at it. I've mentioned the parry before, but the game's combat system really relies on those parries. You can also block and dodge, of course, but the dodge doesn't really bring you that far, and while the block does decrease the damage taken, a parry completely negates it, and if you manage to parry the enemy enough times, it'll even get stunned, creating an opening to do a finisher move, which will either just kill the enemy or, in the case of a boss, do massive damage. And this does make the parry system super satisfying. The game does a good job at showing when you have to parry, the sound effect is on point, you get a really cool animation, and the payoff is definitely worth it. But it is quite challenging as the parry window isn't that big, which is kinda why I did suck at the game at first. I'm usually pretty shitty at games like this when I first start playing them. I don't know why, it just takes me a while to get used to the enemy timings and the parry windows, but when it clicks and when the game has a good combat system, I do always end up loving it, and I had the exact same thing with this demo. While I was struggling at first, by the time that I got to the final boss of the area, I was doing pretty good, and damn did it feel satisfying. Part of that was just me getting used to how this game plays, but another part of that was also thanks to the skill tree, because there are some really good skills on there. Some games just fill the skill tree with stuff like X% more damage or X% more defense, but from what I've seen and from what I unlocked, this skill tree actually really affects gameplay in a bigger way. Unlocking things like a perfect dodge, increasing the parry window, completely new abilities like a guard break and a shift and other stuff like that. The more skills I unlocked, the more fun I got out of this combat system, and that's what I experienced only from this demo, which is like the first hour or something of the whole game. So I'm really excited to see how this combat system will evolve as you progress through the rest of the story, and also to see how the different elements like the ranged weapons will come into this. I do hope that there are other skills that improve your dodge though, besides for just adding a perfect dodge, because the way that the dodging works is honestly my biggest gripe with the demo, since this dodge kind of just brings you nowhere and you can't even chain dodges together. This does help to make you focus on parrying attacks instead of just dodging, but in situations like this one where you're fighting a mob of enemies and you need to hit those exploding barrels, it really sucks that you can't really dodge out of range that easily. So hopefully there's a skill somewhere that allows you to chain dodges together or to increase the range of dodging. Or if not a skill, maybe it can be an ability gained through equipment or something, because equipment also comes with some benefits. Which brings me to my next point, because Eve, the playable character, has a lot of customization in her outfits and her equipment. As far as I know, the outfits themselves don't give you stats. The stats are bound to your equipment, but at the same time there is an exception to that. One exception that the internet has been talking about a lot being the skin suit, because when you take off all of your equipment you do get a different visual outfit. But of course, since you're not wearing any equipment, you aren't shielded either, and you will be taking a lot more damage. I don't know exactly how all of the different visual outfits are gonna come into play here. We've already seen a lot of different outfits in all of the trailers, and it would definitely suck if we had to take stats into account when choosing our trip, but I feel like the outfits are either a separate thing that come on top of your equipment, or it's some kind of transmog feature or something, or at least that's what I'm hoping for. One final thing that I want to touch on gameplay-wise is that I really love that there's more to the gameplay than just the combat. The level from the demo was a lot more than just an empty city for you to fight enemies in or to fetch items from. Just simple things like finding a different path that leads to a new piece of equipment or solving a puzzle to get a code for a locked chest was honestly good fun, especially since the game also has a lot of different ways to traverse the world. There's a climbing mechanic, you can swim, you can dive under the water, you can push around objects that are floating on the water to jump on top of them and reach new areas. Stuff like that is really small, but it's just a nice distraction. Especially because none of it is scripted or on rails, so you're actually finding stuff yourself. Like here, you had to push this pallet closer to the ladder, but while doing so, I spotted this chest on the other side of the gate under the water, which made me push around some more objects so I could unlock it. The game didn't tell me to do it, there wasn't a marker, it wasn't extremely obvious, it wasn't even tedious and slow to set up either, it was just pure organic exploration and puzzle solving. It was only a small thing, I don't think it took me more than a minute or something, but it's stuff like that that just tickles my brain in the right way, if you know what I mean. In general, I was just a big fan of the level design, especially after so many games are going open world now, with stuff like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or Dragon's Dogma or Elden Ring, or semi-open world games like Final Fantasy XVI or the newer God of War games, you name it. It's kinda refreshing to see a linear level again with branching paths. To me, it felt very similar to something like an Uncharted. That might be a very strange and random comparison, but the linear levels that include some climbing and some parkour, some little side paths, some bars to swing from that lead to treasure, same thing that I mentioned earlier with the underwater chests, it just reminded me of that type of game. And according to interviews, there will also be some chapters that are more open. Again, something that Uncharted 4 also had with levels like Madagascar. I'm not gonna go further into that comparison though, since it is extremely random, but I don't know, I just like how the level was laid out, judging from the demo, because it was linear, but it didn't feel restrictive, and it was open, but it didn't feel needlessly open and bloated. It felt straight to the point and fun to explore. Also because it has the whole Soulsborne shortcuts and stuff like that. Like there was this one chest in the demo that was locked, and it needed a code to open, and I actually never found that code. I might just be dumb and missed it in an obvious spot, but I kept thinking about that chest, and at points I would give up and just continue the main path, but then the main path would loop around again location because of a shortcut, bringing me closer to that chest once again, which of course gave me hope that the code is actually hidden somewhere further in the level, and I would just loop around to it later to be able to open it. It's stuff like that that I really enjoy. It was linear, but it didn't feel restrictive, and with so many massive open world games being released lately, that's gonna be extremely refreshing. And because the climbing and the swimming and just the general traversal felt so natural and not at all restrictive, I'm also pretty excited to see the more open levels every now and then, as long as they don't go overboard with it and make them overstay their welcome with a million side quests. But from what I read in interviews, I feel like it will be fine, and the open levels kinda just seem to be a way to change things up every now and then. Something else that also made this area really fun to explore outside of the gameplay and the traversal is just the vibe of it all. I said it before, atmosphere-wise, this game is extremely like NieR, and when we're talking about games that have a vibe and an atmosphere, NieR is definitely up there. Mostly because of the music, because NieR has a phenomenal OST, and the same people that made the OST for NieR are also doing a majority of the music here. So to nobody's surprise, it sounded amazing. And of course, the game also looked beautiful. I really like that the game also gave you the time to let it all sink in with the campsites. The only thing that I don't really like though is how the hair looks, because it's kinda wild how it's flying around when Eve is doing flips. It's literally all over the place. Like, don't get me wrong, it's extremely impressive that it looks like that and that it's not clipping through anything, but I don't know if hair is supposed to fly around that crazily. I wanted to play with a long ponytail, but I switched to the short one. Not that it really matters, but I kind of wanted to mention it, I guess. I don't know why I wrote this part of my script, to be honest, but I'm keeping it in. The final thing that I wanted to touch on though is the story, and that is the thing that I'm most... I wouldn't say worried, but I guess that's the one aspect that I'm not completely sold on yet. What we got from the demo was cool, but the demo was the first hour of the game, and for an open in segments, there was very little story there. Like, compare this to other games like FF16 or FF7, they had a demo that showcased the beginning of the game, and it showcased the combat and the mechanics, but they also served as an introduction to the world and the story. Even something like a Scarlet Nexus, a game that isn't really known for its story, even if I did really enjoy that game and its story, I feel like that game had a lot more going on in its opening story-wise compared to this. So right after finishing the demo, I was a little bit worried about that, but then the trailer played showcasing a lot of scenes from our main cast, and then I thought back about the other trailers that we saw and glimpses from the story that were already shown in previous showcases, and those did look really interesting, so I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not like there wasn't any story at all in this demo. There were some nice interactions between Adam and Eve and stuff like that, but compared to some other games, it's not like the opening instantly has me hooked on the narrative. The opening 10 minutes or so did go very hard though, a lot harder than I expected them to go, and there was some very interesting stuff with Tachi, especially if you've looked at the trailers. Plus, apparently, while this developer doesn't have a lot of experience in AAA console development, their previous game Nikke is supposed to have a very good story, so there is a lot going for them on that side of things. I just hope that this game does put a focus on telling a narrative. I'm personally just someone who would sit through some pretty questionable gameplay if the story is worth it, and in those cases, those games will also become very memorable to me and experiences that I will look back on fondly, while if a game has really good gameplay but a story that's kinda whatever, like yeah, it might have some good and fun moments, it's some cool set pieces here and there, but I am someone who goes into most games looking for a story to hook me, a world that can intrigue me, and characters that I can get attached to. If a game is mostly just gameplay focused, it'll still be a good and fun time and I'll enjoy it, but then it also won't really stick with me in the long term. I'm not expecting this story to be a masterpiece or anything like that though, I just hope that the game has a solid narrative and it's not just a gameplay game with the story that's just kind of tacked onto it. But again, while the demo left me wanting a bit more, the trailers did look really cool and interesting. And while I'm talking about the trailers, now that I've played the game myself and now that I've got a feel for how the game works, looking at the trailers and seeing the diverse range of areas that we will be exploring, that does hype me up. Also, the blade surfing is really cool. I wanted to mention it somewhere in this video, And I didn't know where, so I'm just putting it in here now, I guess. So yeah, in conclusion, I am very excited for this game. The gameplay was sick, the music fucks, and the story seems interesting. And what more do you need? I'm also glad that this game is apparently set to be between 30 and 40 hours long if you do side content, 20 to 25 if you focus on the main story, and that seems to me like a pretty good ratio for a game like this. So yeah, I'm excited. I don't know if this is gonna be a day one buy or not for me. I'm definitely picking it up close to release, but it's kinda gonna depend on what else I'm playing by the end of this month. But what did you think about the demo? Did you play it? Did you like it? Were there things that bothered you about it? Are there some things that I maybe forgot to mention? Let me know in the comments below, and if you liked the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Again, it really does mean a lot to me. And why not check out my Twitter? I'm pretty active on there, tweeting about the stuff that I'm playing, tweeting updates on my videos, stuff like that. I've kinda been forgetting to plug my Twitter on YouTube videos lately, but yeah, follow that if you are interested. But that was it for me. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate all of the support. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon.